As a watch fan, I like to sometimes do a reality check with a normie. That can be my wife, kids, or in particular friends that react to my hobby and videos in exactly this way. Yes, that's another watchmate, looks the same as the last one, and how much is it? Are you nuts? It's good to do this exercise, remembering that most people couldn't care less for these expensive bits of fragile mechanics that have been superseded by both quartz and silicon technology. A Panerai watch doesn't look like anything else. They are oversized, cushion-shaped, sometimes have bits of metal stuck to the side of them, and they have a friend of the brand fan base referred to as the Paneristi. To normies, they can appear a little insane. For me, it's hard not to draw parallels to my own first car ownership of a brown Alfa Romeo Alfa Sud, which was mine for 5 years. There are the Alfistis that loved this brand passionately, and I was one of them. It didn't matter that bits were constantly falling off, my speedometer worked only sporadically over the years, the windows sometimes fell into the doors, and the second gear was basically useless. It didn't matter since that engine revved and sounded like no other. And it was genuinely fun to drive despite all its many flaws. And much to my friend's surprise, it always started flawlessly throughout cold Swedish winters. These are two iconic Italian brands, and whilst I'm certainly not implying that a Panerai is badly built, I'm referring more to the emotion that slightly impractical objects can bring out in us that makes us overlook all of the things that just simply do not make sense. So as I'm reviewing this beautiful Panerai PAM 00183 today, on loan from my friend John, whether you're already a fan or have never seen or cared about a Panerai watch before, my aim is to capture the spirit of the brand and convey why people fall in love with these things. Let's get stuck in. The Panerai brand was brought into the spotlight by the actor Sylvester Stallone. If you're a famous actor, or even just a human being, that can help bring my channel into the limelight, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. Grazie mille. The first Panerai shop opened in 1860 in Florence, Italy. The brand has an amazing history which is hard not to touch on when approaching this style. The sandwich construction with its large numbers and stick indices not only makes it extremely legible in daylight, but nighttime viewing is rather incredible, which I'll come back to. The Radiomir that's so prominent here was patented in 1916, and whilst that certainly had radioactive components to help with the legibility both underwater and in the dark, nowadays there's none of that. The Black Seal refers to Italy's elite combat divers that presumably drove alphas to the Navy bases and didn't break down on their way. At just above the 6th position is the Panerai word mark. All these typefaces are large and prominent, but never out of proportion to my eyes. The only immediate proof that the watch is running is the small seconds hand at the 9th position, which is similar in size to the 3 on the opposite side, and this keeps everything in proportion. The stick, hour and minute hands are only slightly thicker than the minute markers, but legibility is absolutely spot on. The ever so slightly domed crystal does have AR coding, but thanks to the black dial, reflections will always be part of your viewing experience. Overall, I think this Panerai dial is gorgeous, easy to see, and I like it a lot. Of course, it is easier to use a large design language on a watch of this size, so let's talk about that for a sec. The diameter is 45mm both across and top to bottom. It's like a big square cushion. The lug to lug is approximately 49mm and is 13.2mm thick. So this is a large watch, no doubt, but on my 19cm wrist, it's certainly prominent, but due to its shape and thickness, it wears surprisingly well. Cushion-shaped cases are objectively beautiful. The flowing round shapes and high polish are delicate and attractive, but usually look best when all polished, like we find here. So that's great and all, but it will mean scratches. That's okay, I think, with a watch that harks back to military operations, but if this bothers you, you'll forever be worried wearing it. Speaking of fit for purpose, this screw-down crown is just over 6mm and sticks out about 4mm. You definitely wouldn't want to knock this thing too hard, since it does feel like it could cause some damage if you're not careful. It is signed with the Panerai logo and it has an unusual feeling winding movement. It does actually feel a bit like an old pocket watch. Flipping the watch over, and there's a lot to look at here, again covered by another sapphire crystal. The OP11 movement is based on the ETA 6497-1. It's hand wound and offers up to 56 hours of power reserve. Apparently it does hark back to older hand wound pocket watch designs that explain the winding feel. Noteworthy is that the movement does not hack, meaning the seconds will not stop when pulling the crown out. The best part of a hand wound movement is that there's no rotor to obstruct the view, and winding the movement is a visual as well as a visceral experience. These movements should perform well and be easy to service, which is good. I suppose the bad part could be that for a watch at this price point, it's not a particularly exciting nor innovative movement. However you feel, it's nice to look at, and surrounding it is again bold text stating the impressive heritage and Florence 1860. You can read this clearly without any close-ups, but here's some for you anyway. The wire lugs offers up some more Italian quirkiness. At each corner is a tiny screw to hold the lugs in place, which is a patented solution. Unscrewing these means you're left holding 4 parts from each corner that meet in the middle of the watch strap on each side. This limits your strap choices, but since obtaining an original is hideously expensive, there are plenty of third-party options available should you want to change yours. It's quite an elegant solution, and it's easy enough to do yourself with nothing but some eye magnification and fine screwdriver. Speaking of hideously expensive straps, this is an original 24mm strap, and it's heavy duty for sure. Across the top we get official Panerai text and a buckle that's both high polish and sturdy. On the inside we get a made in Italy and more official text. It's definitely a nice strap, but is it $500 nice? I don't think so. Now finally, let's check out this Lume. It's just as awesome as you'd expect from a sandwich dial, despite perhaps fading a little too quick. Let's enjoy. This is the first time I've handled a Panerai. I feel these particular models are a little more accessible than the more famous designs with the large contraption to seal the crown on the right hand side. I love the look of the bold dial, and the cushion case is gorgeous, but the enormous straps and 45mm case is large even for me. I can totally appreciate why there is such a passionate following of this brand. There is so much personality injected into these things. Take the lug design for instance, or the dial that's like nothing else. Going back even further, the fact that Rolex made both cases and movements from the brand back in the day, and you have some bragging rights too with your watch. I remember a close friend of mine proudly mentioning that his Alpha 164 had an automatic gearbox made by Mercedes. The Swiss, Germans and Italians share borders, and in the Swiss case, languages. So it makes sense to share the best of all worlds with some Italian passion and Swiss precision. Should you buy your own Panerai? I think the answer is yes, and I'd highly recommend this model that is a little more accessible than the outright diver watches. Sure, they are not cheap, and I would personally look at a second-hand watch that's been well looked after, which is exactly what I would do with an Italian car also. They are not quite Ferraris for your wrist, but a lovely old Alpha that runs like a trooper and makes you feel good about yourself? Yes, it is exactly that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.